Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. It's a Saturday, and thank you for being with us tonight. I know you can go to the malls and go to restaurants, but you chose to be with us tonight. Thank you so much, dear friends. Oh, before we go, I'm really happy because we have a lot of good friends tuned in. Theodore Vargas, hi Theodore. Kelly Taylor from Texas. So we have somebody from Texas, Rich. Archie de Guzman, Bob Hudson from Bataan. Hello, dear friends. Chow Yan Kwan Yap from Cebu, my very good friend from Cebu. She works with the Cebu Tourism and was my tour guide during my last trip there. Hi, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And we've got a very exciting episode tonight. So, tonight is episode 10 of the 2022 World War II lecture series brought to you by Philwar Foundation and FAME, or Filipino American Memorial Endowment. Tonight's episode is a little bit different because all our other episodes are about military history or battles or liberation of certain places. Tonight is a human interest story. So it's really, really interesting. I met our speaker 3 years ago in a conference, and when he presented this, I was just really moved by this story. So I decided to, bring him in for you guys tonight. And I'm gonna introduce you our speaker for tonight. Richard Foye is a retired educator with an extensive 35 years experience as a history teacher, school administrator, principal, and headmaster of different schools in Connecticut, USA. He finished his bachelor's degree in education, major in history at the University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut, and his master's of arts, major in history and education at the same university. Upon retirement in 2015, he headed to the Philippines to do research on his dad's wartime experience here. And in 2018, he published his book, Foye and the Filipinos. He lives in Connecticut with his wife, Dee, and children, Erin and Brian. Friends, please help me welcome Richard Foye. The mic is yours, Rich.
Okay, very good. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. So let's begin, starting with slide one. As Desiree said, I'm Richard Foye. I'm the son of World War II Navy pilot William Foye. And Foye went to sea as a fighter pilot, single seat plane assigned to the USS Enterprise. All the proceeds, I want you to know this, all the proceeds support the Bill Foye Philippine Scholarship Fund. And these funds are held by the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut. The funds received by the organizations listed below. Los Banos Memorial Scholarship at the rural high school there, the Peace Corps Alumni Scholarships in the Philippines. Those go to students that are attending college. And locally, there's a friend of that I've known for many years, married a lady from the Philippines, and they live in Connecticut, and they do good work in the Philippines. They call their organization Kids Philippines, Inc. And as Desiree said, I graduated from the University of Connecticut, and a proud Husky. So let's talk a little bit about Foye and the Filipinos, the book. It's a Navy aviation story about World War II. It's also a story about President Quinzoni's own guerrillas. They'll be referred to as the PQOGs, one of the numerous guerrilla groups that were in the Philippines. It's also about the brave people of Luzon that helped and protected my father. So we hope as you read the book and during this talk, you'll learn a little bit about the character of the people that were involved in this story. What was Bill Foye like? Why do you risk your life to save this American pilot? Actually, two pilots, as you'll come to find out. And part of it is war brings out the best and the worst of people, love and hate. So the book has pieces of the brotherly love that the fighter squadron men had for each other, the love, the bond of the people trying to save the Americans from the enemy. and the love Bill Foye experienced when he met his Navy nurse and started a family after the war. Ensign William Foye, a lucky pilot. How did he make it? Foye boy, this is it, he said as he flew over the Los Banos internment camp and he jumped out of his plane. Let's start here with Foye after the war meets Admiral Mitchell. You might remember, if you're familiar with World War II naval history, this admiral at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The planes were returning. It was dark. They couldn't see the carriers. And he took the very risky act of turning on the lights of the ships so that the planes could find their way back. But the Lowell Sun, Maine newspaper in Lowell, Massachusetts, in March 1945, described Navy pilot William Foye's 3+ months in the Philippines upon his return. They said, Bill Foye's story was one of the classics of this or any other war. Foye and the Filipinos tells this classic, lucky story of World War II. Three months, 3+ months, hiding, running, injured, but Foye makes it. Lieutenant Boyle was with Foye for much of the ordeal. When I talked to his son, Lieutenant Boyle's son, after the war, he said his father said that if the pilot knew how hurt he was, he never would have made it. So Leonisa saw him bail out October 1944, just past the Los Banos internment camp. Please, please save the American pilot, she prayed. Help came. A PBY seaplane rescued in early February 1945. As Air Group 20 docked at Pearl Harbor in mid-February 1945, there was Lieutenant J.G. Foye waving from the pier. The pilot saw him and shouted, "Where the hell have you been?" So imagine, all his mates that he's trained with and went to war with are coming back to Pearl Harbor, but Foye, in February, Foye's been missing since October. And there they are hanging over the gun tubs that they had on the sides of the escort carriers. They came back on the Quajalon, and they're leaning over, and they see this skinnier pilot in khakis, and they start saying, "That's Foye." And then they realize it is Foye, and they start yelling at him, "Where the hell have you been?" Indeed. But to make it there, I put this symbol on the right from St. Michael's Church in Lowell. His mother went to church every day. And this certificate said that Mass would be said for him at various times. Here's the book jacket, Foye and the Filipinos. Let's take a look at this so we get to know Foye a little bit. Here are three children, middle school age, Shano, his brother, and a younger boy, Ali. And Foye landed about 100 yards from him. Foye had jumped out of his Hellcat, his fighter plane. He was only about 350 feet. Tried to get the parachute to open. It didn't open fully. He landed and he rolled his 6th and 7th vertebrae up on each other. And then he was in the cougar grass here. And the boy said to him, "Are you an American?" And Foye said, "Yes." "What do you need?" He said, I need to get away from the Japanese." So here he is. This is the pilot, Foye. He's holding his head up because he can't lift his head by himself because of the neck injury. And this sturdy young man, his name was Lando. And Leonisa, who you will meet extensively in this talk and in the book, Leonisa said to me that Lando was big like you when she was talking to me. And soon after Foye had met the boys, Sergeant Estebeza and his group also joined Foye and up Putho Hill, which you'll see, and to hide him from the Japanese. And here quickly, is a photo of a Hellcat. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And here, Theodore Roscoe, who wrote the book On the Seas and in the Skies, The History of the U.S. Navy Aviation. He also wrote submarine operations in World War II, and I think he wrote the same thing for the destroyers. But he was a well-known military naval author. And he thought he was the luckiest of the Navy pilots. And after you read the book, you probably think the same. This is a Liberator, and this is PQOG, guerrilla with GI, walking arm in arm. This newspaper was put out by the PQOGs to counter the propaganda that was coming out from the Japanese through the regular newspapers. And Phil Avicenno, who was the head of the 25th Division and really responsible for leading Foye's eventual rescue. And this is what he wrote as in February 5th, as the pilot Foye and another pilot, John Boyle, were leaving on the PBY. They expressed their sincerest regret for having to part ways with their Filipino brothers in arms and Filipino citizens, civilian friends, whom they had learned to love, more so for having risked their lives than affording them protection. Imagine the intensity of 3.5 months, life or death every day, trying not to get captured by the Japanese. So here we are, Foye and the Filipinos. Thank you, Desiree, for the invitation to tell the story. We all thank you for your work in World War II history. Generations hence will appreciate her efforts, I believe. Special thanks for those still alive that remember the war and the connection to this story. Leonisa, Valoria, Sofia Tidon, Trinidad Manzones Capuna, Delia Manzones, Cynthia Banta. And prayers and memories for those that have passed. Thanks for the love, caring, and for saving my dad. So to get to know Foye a little bit, I had 4 people write forwards. First, in the upper left is Admiral Robert Rube Olson, whose last assignment was as superintendent, the head of the Coast Guard Academy that trains the Coast Guard officers here in the States. And he is a sailor. If he was sailing maybe on a little boat like above my head, or he's captaining a 300+ foot Coast Guard cutter, quite a guy. And we were talking about the bravery of the Filipino people and the Navy pilots. And he said to me, Rube says, Richie, you know, they were brave. It was their time. It was their time in their life. They had to decide to stand up, to be brave. And as Rube is able to do, he says he takes complicated ideas and says them very succinctly. And I think he captures the moment there. Now, my favorite picture, one of my favorite pictures, is we have Leonisa Valoria in the red, and Sophia Tidon in the darker dress. Together only a year or so ago, just about a year ago, in Los Banos, they got together, had not seen each other for decades. Leonisa saw my father bail out of the plane just as it went by the Los Banos internment camp. She looked up, she saw the plane smoking, she saw a pilot jump out, parachute tried to open, the propeller from the Hellcat broke off because the plane had no oil left. So the engine seized up and the propeller landed very, very near to her. And she said to herself, oh, please God, save this American pilot, as she ran to tell her dad, who was had been a Philippine scout, about the plane that had just crashed and the pilot that had just bailed out. And down on the left corner is my sister Kathleen, and Kathleen wrote a foreword, and she tells in her foreword that she did not learn that my father had broken his neck when he bailed out until she was in second grade. She knew he was a pilot and that he was rescued and that he buried my mother, who was a Navy nurse. But she thought it was almost like a Hemingway novel based on the omission of my father telling that story to any of his children. Of course, another second grader knew the story, but Kathleen wrote a very nice foreword to give you a sense of my dad. And then you have Sophie Tidone, hero of Los Banos, who gave first aid to my father in a hut very near Putho Hill, where they hid my dad for a few days. And then she was, as a 16 or 17-year-old, she did medical first aid procedures for the guerrillas, for the PQOG. She was a corporal. She was a corporal in the PQOGs. So now we have a short video that was done by Kevin Nathan, who was one of the anchors on NBC, channel NBC Connecticut, based out of Hartford. And a few years ago, he did this, and it'll give you a good idea of the overall story.
As we mark the 75-year anniversary of D-Day, we pay tribute to our greatest generation. A few months after D-Day, American pilot William Foye was shot down in the Philippines. And what happened from there to the late former New London High School principal reads like a Hollywood script.
His survival story was captured in a book called Foye and the Filipinos. It's written by his son, Rich. NBC Connecticut's Kevin Nathan has more.
Rich Foye opens a trunk full of memories from his New London home. For decades, Foye's father, William, quietly tucked away the pilot chute, neck brace, and letters that would define his World War II survival story.
Most of the World War II combat veterans had seen so much, they just wanted to move on. They didn't want to talk about it.
But before William Foye died in 1993, he revealed the trunk and some of the stories inside it. It inspired Rich Foye to write a book about his father.
My father would have been flying over this.
On October 18th, 1944, the final chapter of Foye's story was nearly written. On his 22nd single-pilot mission, his plane was shot down by the Japanese.
The engine smoking, hard to see, hard to breathe.
Foye lost radio control, his best option to bail out over land in the Philippines.
One of his memories said, "Foye, boy, this is it. You have to jump out, try not to get hit with a part of the plane."
Foye's parachute didn't have enough time to fully deploy.
As he hits the ground, he feels a searing pain in his back and his neck.
Foye landed feet first and dislocated and broke his neck. Some teenage boys found him in the town of Los Banos in the Philippines.
He said, "What do you want?" He says, I want to get away." He was in trouble. He is in trouble.
Foye says his father laid on his back for 3 weeks as the pro-American Filipino guerrilla fighters hid him from the Japanese. Foye estimates that 20 to 30 people lost their lives protecting his father and another American pilot.
The Japanese are searching, and there are people massacred or killed and tortured for not telling where these pilots were.
That's why it's emotional for you.
Oh, yeah. You're here because of those people.
After about 4 months in hiding, Foye and fellow pilot John Boyle used a mirror to get discovered on a lake and picked up by an American seaplane.
One of the themes is the random nature of who lived and who died.
Back in the U.S., the random one-on-one nurse Foye needed became his wife and mother to 8 kids and 19 grandchildren.
It's a movie script that it'd be hard for Hollywood to to believe.
It took retired educator Rich Foye 8 years of research to write the book. It's a tribute to his father, all World War II veterans, and the brave Filipinos who sacrificed so much.
It was a thank you to tell what the Filipino people did to save my father. If you weren't choked up, it wasn't a good day writing.
Now, Rich Foye says his dad sent letters to thank the Philippines. In writing the book, Rich Foye traveled to the Philippines and found the people who saw his father bail out of the plane and give him first aid. Chance encounters Foye calls lucky and divine intervention. The book's available on Amazon. Foye says proceeds will go to a scholarship fund for students in the Philippines. Kevin Nathan, NBC Connecticut News.
So going back to the book, at the beginning of the book, I have a page that has the signatures of Fighter Squadron 20 pilots, and there's a couple torpedo squadron pilots that signed the book to Big E when my father took it to a reunion. And on the right side is a page from a book that was given to my father on February 5th, just before they left on the rescue plane at PBY, and the various guerrillas signed it. First, back to the pilots. If you look, a couple of examples. You look here, you have Eugene Sheridan and Glenn Denham. Both were on Navy Cross. Both were involved with suppressing fire and dropping bombs on the Musashi back at the Battle of Lady Gulf, or Shorty Turnbull shot down, Fred Shorty Turnbull shot down off Formosa. The wind was blowing inshore, so he couldn't get away, and eventually ended up in the Ufuna prisoner of war camp that was quite brutal. Other prisoners that were there, Pappy Boynton was there, Medal of Honor winner, and O'Kane, the submarine skipper, was there, also a Medal of Honor a winner. Great heroes. When Fighter Group 20 got back to Pearl Harbor, in the entire air group, fighters, torpedo bombers, and dive bombers, they were awarded 33 Navy Crosses. That's the second highest honor you can be awarded, just below Medal of Honor. And there were 48 Distinguished Flying Crosses. It was quite an air group. They were quite successful. And you have the PQOG leaders here. The head of Ensenyo signed it. Caradong, who took care of Foye at Tananan and his group. Cordero was G2 in the area. Enriquez was his lieutenant. He wasn't there, but he was the second in command. And Aquino, who, when he wrote Foye after the war, he signed it. He said, "Your jungle friend," and he signed his letter. Brave folks. Let's look at a map briefly here. First, on the simpler side here, the Enterprise is off 250 miles off the east coast of Manila. On this day, their mission that my father was on was to, with Bakutis leading, the leader of the air group. They went to Nichols Field. It was just too cloudy to do any effective bombing or strafing of fighters, because this was October 18th. So you're only 2 days away from the lady landings and the return of the Americans to the Philippines and to drive out the Japanese. So they went up to Clark Field and did the same thing there, and they met as many as 50 fighters were in the air at one time. And the book describes that in some detail. And then finally, Foye's plane was shot up. The engine had oil leaking onto the engine, and it was smoking. And he made it back to Los Banos on Laguna de Bay. And here we have the rescue lake. I call it the rescue lake, Lake Tom. On this map, this is a late 1930s map here. And you can see Lake Tal here. The pilots, you'll see this in a little while, were on this beach. And the PBY came in to rescue them. Los Banos is over here. So the area in this area, about 20 miles, maybe 15 to 20 miles, depending on what day, what week it was that they were running from and hiding from the Japanese. And then the other key thing to remember is that in late January in the Shuba, the 11th Airborne came ashore in this area. And General Swing said he wanted a parachute drop at Tagaytay Ridge, which is up here, Tagaytay Ridge, to cover their flank. And then the Airborne went up and joined the fight in Manila. This is Corregidor. Give you some reference, and I shouldn't have done that. Let me go back for a second to the map. Sorry. So Corregidor is here, Bataan. So you get the Manila Bay's up in this area. So you get a reference of where this took place. This is the declassification certification from the archives. And here is the Big E, the USS Enterprise. Foye went aboard in August 1944, and this is how the ship was. This is the ship during that time period. You can see the camouflage, what they call the dazzle paint job that was supposed to disguise how fast and what direction the ship was going if you visually spotted it, if the enemy visually spotted it. USS Enterprise, the most decorated ship in the U.S. Navy. So to go aboard the Enterprise in 1944, it was probably the best well-known Navy ship in the whole fleet. Here you can see the Hellcats on the deck. See how the wings fold backwards on it's a Grumman plane. Again, a Grumman design here, playing the torpedo bombers. They're a little bit bigger. And the Hell Divers, the dive bombers on this part of the deck. But this is a classic photo of Enterprise. You'll see this many times in books. This is a Hellcat from the training squadron, VJ Squadron 7. And it's March 7th, 1944. And they're training in San Diego. And they flew at least two hops a day in training. And I looked at the flight log, of my father's flight log, and it appeared to me that he flew this plane. I enlarged the number on the tail. He flew this plane on March 7th, 1944. And another pilot flew it on the same day. But my father had this 8x10 glossy photo from the photographer. So I kind of think it's him, but I guess you could dispute that. But that's what the Hellcat looked like, and you can see these are well-worn training planes. This is the Hellcat at the Pensacola Naval Air Station Museum. That's me. That's the Hellcat. And up, suspended here off the floor is a PBY. And this is the rescue plane that comes into Lake Tahoe, takes off Foye, Boyle, Avicenna, and a escaped prisoner from the Los Banos camp, takes them over to Mindoro. Interesting that this, you can't see it there, but this plane, the restoration, was funded by Jack Taylor, who, at least in the States, you may have heard of Enterprise rental car. Well, he started it. He was a Hellcat pilot, and he served for a short time with Air Group 20, and I think he was, most of his time was with Air Group 15. So Pensacola, this looks like a Air Group 15 designation. On the tail had Air Group 20 designation. At least that was my interpretation. But it was great to see him in both planes in pristine condition down in Pensacola. Let's take a look at what it was like on the carrier. This is October 1944. And Air Group 20 is heading to do a strike in the Manila area. Is this before or after my father was had to bail out? It's hard to tell, could not tell. But these are his mates. They'll be getting into the Hellcat and preparing to take off. After their checklist, let's take a look and watch the deck crews also and how they work. So they are into the Hellcat, plane captain. Now they start their engines. Hellcats are in the foreground. The Avenger torpedo bombers are in the background. The hierarchy on the bridge of the Enterprise. They get ready to take off. Note the triangle on the tail. That means it's Air Group 20. And the deck crew putting bombs onto the various planes. Watch the kids now. Here they are. Look at, they're all young kids. Watch one guy jump up on the wing of the Hellcat just to make sure that when they unfolded it, the pin was in correctly. And they're down the deck, tail up a little bit. My father said, if you didn't go right off the deck, if you slipped down a little bit below the deck, the skipper was going to chew you out. Here they go. Tail up a little bit. Watch how quickly the gear goes up. They get the gear up and they're off. So now let's talk about landing an airplane. These are torpedo bombers here, and you can see there's a hook coming down and the landing gear is down and their flaps are down. And if you miss the hook on the cable, you went into crash barriers. There are 3 sets of cables that raise up to protect the planes that are forward from getting crashed into a plane. And when that happens, or if a plane bounced over the barriers, which happens on occasion, it was devastating because the planes are still full of gasoline and fuel and the fires, and they might have some ammunition left. It happened on occasion. But you watch the LSO officer, landing signal officer, bring them in just with his paddles. There's no electronics. There's no call the ball like in Top Gun. It's just you're watching the man with the paddles guiding them in out of their left turn. Let's take a look. Here comes a Hellcat, about 80, 85 knots onto the deck. And watch the barriers come up. He goes by the barriers, here they come. So if you miss, you're going into those barriers, one of those 3 barriers. Here's a landing signal officer, torpedo bomber coming in. George Bush flew one of these. And he'll get the cut from the LSO. There's the cut. He's down to the deck. And one last Hellcat, left turn, gets the cut onto the deck. So here we are. This is Los Banos, Puto Hill. You get, this is current day. And if you've been to University of the Philippines at Los Banos and the Centennial Tower, you know where it is. So I took this photo from Baker Memorial Hall. It's probably pretty close to that. And over on the left, this is the same spot, see the notch, during World War II. But now there's 2,100 civilians in this camp. There's barbed wire. Initially, civilians, Japanese civilians ran the camp. but later on it got turned over to the military. It became a brutal camp, and they were afraid that they were going to massacre the inmates. In 1945, they had a giant trench dug, but MacArthur told Schwing to make plans and get them out of there. And it's a very exciting story. Rescue at Los Banos. Bruce Henderson wrote a book a couple of years ago, but there's many books on that. And this is the other side of Puto Hill. This is Puto Hill right here. And so you can see where there's the farmland. And Leonisa was in one of these when she saw the plane fly over. Right here, you can just see a little red roof. And that's where Howie Cizone lives now. His dad built the house. He passed away a few years ago. Howie was very gracious. We came rolling into his house a couple times. There's a driveway, goes up the hill. And he was born and brought up on the hill. And he knew where he thought that they hid my father for 5 days when the Japanese were combing the area to try to find him. I go into that in some detail in the book, but it's very dense, as those that have been there know. It's very dense vegetation and jungle, if you will. And this is Baker Memorial Hall. This is World War II. The internees are waiting for to go down to the Laguna de Bay to their rescue in February. And this is Baker Memorial Hall a few years ago. But I want you to look for this hall when I show you a film clip from the Army Air Corps, Army Signal Corps, that they took flying over very close, if not exactly the route my father was flying over, except that his engines were smoking and he was about getting ready to bail out. So we'll take a look at this, and you'll see Baker Memorial Hall, so you get a reference point. Here, all right, so you're coming down, your engine's gonna go seize up, you're losing altitude, and Foye's about to stand on his seat. First, he put tabs forward so the plane would head down, onto the seat, grab the ripcord, and jump into space at about 300 feet, which is way too low for a parachute to fully deploy, and that's why he dislocated his neck. So there he goes. He's thinking, Foye, boy, this is it. I got to get out of this plane. It's smoking. There goes Memorial Hall. He's heading towards Puto Hill. Gets on the seat, tabs forward, jumps out, and he's about to meet his 3 middle school age friends. And watching this was Leonisa Valoria. Leonisa, who she was still a young teenager, and said, God, please save this American pilot. After the war, she worked as a pediatrician and medical care of the baby. She crawled through some of the very poorest areas of Manila. She told me after the war to try to keep everybody as healthy as possible. As I said, her father, Marcelo, was a Philippine scout, and she accepted his congressional gold medal in April 2018, ceremony arranged by Cecilia Garland of the Bataan Legacy group. She also would run guns by the Japanese at different checkpoints. So she's 17, and her mostly male buddies were 17. They would go into the barracks, the Japanese barracks, and steal guns or whatever they could when the Japanese were out doing their various duties. And Leonisa would put them in a bag and run them by the guards. And she told me the guards would want to carry her bag for her, and she would politely refuse. I said to Leonisa, I said, that's really dangerous, Leonisa. She shrugged her shoulders and said, Rich, we were 17. Brave lady, brave lady. The Manzones, you're going to get a few of the guerrillas now. Big part of saving my dad. We'll start over here on the right with Fernando Manzones. My dad stayed at his house with that cracked neck, laid on his back for 3-4 weeks. Only got up to eat. Most of the time, he was just laying on his back. Francisco, he was his job was to watch Foye. He was a young preteen boy, but his job also, Trinidad told me through the interview with her grandson, that Francisco's job was if the Japanese came in. Usually many times described as zoning. They came into an area and they were looking for Foye. They had Primo Quinto, who the guerrillas called the #1 spy. They were looking for Foye. They wanted him. How come we couldn't catch him? And Francisco would take him to a cave until the Japanese left, and then they bring him back. Trinidad was involved with the care for my father. He thought that that Foye was she said in her interview 6-7 months ago, she said Foye was a handsome man, she thought. But I think one of her best sentences is she said that the family treated the pilots as sons, and the father treated them like sons, and the brothers treated them like brothers, and they were family when they were there to try to save them. Over here is Balbino and Pedro. Pedro said to his daughters who were caring for Foye, trying to feed them, said, give Foye the chicken. And chickens there wasn't a lot of food. So to get a chicken was extraordinary. Give it to Foye. He's going to die if we have him eat the scraps that we eat. And the guerrillas and the people of Laguna and Batangas, if you walk through a village, the pilots, and here's Foye, 6'2", 180 pounds, red hair, blue eyes. He's going to stand out a little bit coming through the village. They'd run out and give him fruit, chichi, or whatever they had, the best that they had to help save the pilots. And can you imagine the apprehension of Babina had, just family involved as guerrillas? Will they get captured, and the tension that she would feel? And just we'll skip down to the two ladies here. They do look like their grandmother. This is Jackie and Gigi. We're in Milan, Italy. Dee and I were going to, my wife Delia, we were going to Milan, and through Facebook, we connected with Jackie, and she said, well, if you come to Milan, we have to get together. And I said, we're going to be there in 6 weeks. And we had a little bite to eat, maybe a glass of wine. It was St. Patrick's Day. So maybe St. Patrick's Day was helping telling an Irish pilot's story a little bit, perhaps. And over here is Felix Manzones. Felix and Estebeso and Rico and Manuel Roa, they were with Foye, and they had to change their spots each day. And Felix was known to making a shelter or lean-to, if you will, every place, every night, and to keep Foye safe from the Japanese. And if they get caught, they're going to get killed. It's very dangerous. Interesting that they would when they were alone, they would sing in the jungle. They would sing. Foye would sing one of the songs he said he sang. McNamara's band and the Guerrillas sang. There's a chapel in the valley. There are some other ones that were mentioned in my father's notes. But I'm just thinking about, you're in the jungle, you're with the Guerrillas, and you're singing, my name is McNamara and the leader of the band. And don't wear low numbers, we're the greatest in the land. It's a surreal kind of situation. This is Sophie. Sophie was an educator, political leader, judge, PQOG captain, and she treated Foye's wounds. Before I forget, I'll go back to the Manzones for a second. Florencia was another one that another Manzones that helped, especially with the food. They make the food 3 miles away from Palma 1 over in San Ildefonso, and they carry it 3 times a day to Foye. And Delia Manzones, who was a young girl, the interesting thing about Delia, after the war, she would ride on the horse with her dad, Pedro, and he would say to her when they went by the big duhut tree, he said, that's where we hid the pilot. And she asked him, this is in the book, very moving thing. She said, did the pilot survive? And her daddy said, yes, the pilot made it. He made it back safely home. But Sophie, let's go back to Sophie. Sophie, I was invited by the family to be with her when she received a gold medal in San Antonio back a few years ago, and July 2018. And one of her sayings, which I love, is she says, I am stronger than my misfortunes. I am stronger than my misfortunes. This is a wonderful, just a wonderful saying. Brave person. She worked for her parents. They had a general store, and she would deliver goods. And she would also deliver messages for the guerrillas. She was caught. The Japanese tied her by the ankles, upside down, dipped her in the rain barrel 3 or 4 times. And every time they pulled her out, they'd ask her to tell who the guerrillas were, information about them. I heard her say this down in San Antonio. She spoke at one of the, she was one of the speakers the day before. And she said, straight back, head up. She said, they wanted me to tell the information, and she said words to the effect, I told them nothing. She said, if you tell them, they'll kill you, and they'll kill 100 more. Brave, tough woman. We messenger on Facebook occasionally, and met her. And Dora Mila has a great Filipino restaurant in San Antonio. if you're ever in the area. Manuel Roja, who we talked about, singing in the jungle with my dad, saving her brother-in-law, Cynthia Banta, and the family. They took them out of Los Banos. Interesting, Cynthia, because Manuel also saved my father. Cynthia and her family, they got him out of Los Banos because, and Phil's wife, because they were closing in. They knew Phil was a guerrilla, and they had to get him out of there. So Cynthia survives. Interesting that her oldest son is the current Attorney General in California. I had occasion Dahlia, my wife, and I had occasion to meet with Cynthia, her two sons and a daughter. Very nice, smart, accomplished people. We had lunch with them in Connecticut. They came to watch Cynthia's grandchild play soccer for Yale back last fall. And Phil here. Phil was the leader, 25th Division. You remember he signed the book, and took great pride in getting Foye out of Los Banos, out of the Philippines without getting caught. This is John Boyle. He was the other pilot. And this is a newspaper photo from the St. Paul Dispatch, I believe. And the guerrillas grabbed him. They were bombing the airport over Aleppo, and he evaded the enemy. And he bailed out November 6th, so a few weeks after Foye, who bailed out October 18th. And they linked them up. The guerrillas linked them up. O'Malley told Foye that they were going to link them up, and O'Malley was the big boss of the PQOGs. They were going to link them up and keep them together and try to save them that way. Now moving to the rescue of Lake Tahoe. This is beautiful Lake Tahoe. Of course, there's been 2 volcanic eruptions since we were there 5 years ago. But the pilots, Los Banos is over here. Mount McKilling is way over here in the distance. They came from, they were in Tawanan, and they put them in a barrio between Bangkalat and Tinuk. Again, Lieutenant Colonel Martiniano Caradon were in command, and they knew there was shelling on the coast at Nashugba. They pointed that out at the map when 11th Airborne came ashore. So they moved the pilots over to this area, and they thought what the guerrillas call Pulu Island, P-U-L-O in the records, and they were on this beach. You'll see this. You'll see this in a second. And they bought them that way. One family I haven't been able to get in contact with is the Caradons, and reached out a couple times on Facebook, but haven't been able to make contact. They had 3 daughters. He had 3 daughters that were involved with medical care, nurses, Efrosina, Dominga, and Consuela, who were all lieutenants in the guerrillas. I like to. That's one missing piece. The pilots stayed with them over in the greater Tawanan area for the month of January 1945, or the better part of the month. So down the road here is where they did the parachute drop at Tagaytay. Another mile down the road, there's a monument to the that commemorates that drop in the middle of a traffic circle there. So now we're on the beach on Pulu Island. Tagaytay Ridge is up here. So the pilots arrived on the island February 3rd, 1945. On February 4th, 1945, 18 C-47s, they're military versions of the DC-3 twin piston engine plane. And Foye and Boyle were up on a ridge, a high ridge. They didn't give a description of exactly which high ridge. And they were using a mirror. One called it a kitchen mirror, wall mirror, different descriptions. And they signaled the planes here. And the leader saw it. The leader of the C-47s and they all came down on the deck. And now imagine, they're on the beach. They've been running from the Japanese, and here comes 18 planes, one behind the other, down on the deck, low. And if you ever Google DC-3 flyby, if you want to see what that looks like, and imagine 18 of them coming by. And they pushed Foye and Boyle forward so they could see that they were the American pilots. A little bit later, C-47s come by, and they double-checked the report from the C-47s. And they did quite an air show, then barrel rolls and different kinds of maneuvers to show that they knew who they were and were spotted, and they were spotted. And the next day, the PBY flew in from over this way, flew in, made a water landing, and Boyle, Foye, Avicenna, and the prisoner from escaped prisoner from the Los Banos camp got on the plane and took them to Medora, and they debriefed them and went to Lady debriefed them because they wanted to know what they knew about the Los Banos area, because they were a couple of weeks away from rescuing the prisoners that were in the internment camp. But quite a thing, unbelievable. It was very emotional being on that beach. I have some video of a lot of things, including this. So anyway, he made it. Bill Foye on the left with Elizabeth Fetzer, who's going to become his wife. And that's during World War II. And this is 1985. And former Navy nurse Ensign Fetzer said, we're going to have family pictures. It was the hottest and humid day. And she told her family, be ready, because pictures are going to be taken on this day. Good thing they did. And there they are. Here's the 8 children, 5 boys, 3 girls. Billy, Paul, Michael, myself, Peter, Betty Ellen, Mary Patricia, and Kathleen, who did the forward, and Betty and Bill. And you think about what Leonisa said. Thank God, please save the American pilot. In Manila Hotel, we got a hold of Jose Custodio, who most of you probably know, and he was a great help with research, connecting with Sophie and my wife Dahlia, and we were about. I think we left the next day. We were exhausted. It was a great visit and a great research time. But we thank Jose for the work he did to help make the book. I think much better than it would have been. And we stopped by the rural high school, and this is Lisa, who passed away a few years ago. She was very gracious when we visited, and so were the faculty. And we saw the dance competition and parts of high school life that, as a high school principal, I was very impressed with and enjoyed our visit. And to end, now I don't think the audio will work on this, but this is air medal citation. But I ended up and we had Bing Crosby singing. You have to imagine singing Tora Lora Lora. My father had a great voice. And I found in the research that Filipinos love to sing. My father was in the college glee club, and he was a great singer. I can imagine him singing with them. So, but there's some interesting photos here you can see. So I'll just play this. Only a few minutes. So that's when he was in traction for the neck. Purple Heart. This is at a radio show in New York City. John C. Stillman, who was Air Combat Information Officer. Later, he was Commodore of the New York Yacht Club. The Peace Tower that was built after the war. Lake Tal at dawn. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rich, for that beautiful presentation. Very insightful. Hellcats parked wingtip to wingtip. So, because when you look at when you watch movie, it was very educational for me. I didn't know that they were parked like that on carriers. So thank you, Richard. It was a very, I told you guys, it's a moving story. It's meant for Hollywood because it has all the elements, action, drama, espionage. We have that Primo Quinto, who is the collaborator there. Espionage, what else? Loyalty and friendship, courage, of course, and romance. So everything's there. So this is a script that Hollywood should get. Amazing story, Rich. I know there's a lot of comments in our Facebook page. First of all, let's say hi to our friends who are watching. There's a lot of them. And I noticed in the comment section, we have descendants of the PQOG watching. There's Jeric Bonilla, you might know them, Rich. And Howard Season.
Oh, Howard, he's from Puto Hill.
Right,
Hi,
so that's his
Howard.
house over there, right?
That's his house. So what a nice man.
Hi,
Great
Howie.
family. The kids are all old now. They were little when I was there.
Oh, hi, Howie. Thanks for watching. And Jeric Bonilla as well. And we also have Tito Jerry Adivoso. So Adivoso, Tito Jerry is the son of Hunter's ROTC head, Terry Adivoso.
And the Hunters, and as you know, the Hunters and the PQOG, they were in the same area.
Right.
You know, same area, and the Hunters had the premier role in the Los Banos, the raid that saved the prisoners.
Right.
So the Army gave them the key role, and PQOG had some other duties down by the Laguna de Bay, and a couple of them were up in the camp, but there were a number of smaller guerrilla groups. Tawanan group, the group that Laurel was head of the Pulo Tagaytay. He was the nephew of the interim president that the Japanese put in. He was a nephew, all connected. So as you know, families were very connected and knew each other, and the different guerrilla groups at times worked closely with each other. Other times they didn't, but they're the ROTC group, very well known guerrilla group, and operating in the similar areas that the PQOGs were.
Right. The PQOG and the Hunters are one of the bigger names, like Markings, Guerrillas.
Yeah.
And the Huachi Guerrillas also participated in the Los Banos raid alongside the Hunters and the PQOG. And tonight we also have we have aviators watching. So Colonel Francis Neri of the Philippine Air Force, he's watching. Hi, Francis. Thanks for watching. And he commented a while ago. I knew this was an aviator commenting because it says, nice wartime photo of the F-6F Hellcat. Who would appreciate more than an aviator, right? We've got friends, Marie Vallejo watching. Hi, Ate Marie. Jerome Kleiman from New York. Hi, Jerome. Thanks for waking up early to watch this. Louis Franco from California. It's, I think, 6 or 7 a.m. there. Thanks for waking up early for us, Louis. A lot of people are tuned in, Rich, here in the Philippines, from all the way up from La Union, Pangasinan, down to Zamboanga. Hi, folks. Hi, thanks for watching. There's one from Iloilo. Amazing. And we also have Emoy Francisco, my good friend from Imus. Imus is the president of the Imus Historical Society. Hi, Emoy. Thanks for watching. Many other friends, Brian, or we have Brigadier General Resty Aguilar also watching. He's the Deputy Administrator of the Philippine Veterans Affairs. Thanks, BJen, for watching. So many people tuned into you tonight, Rich.
It's a great story. It's a great story of Philippine heroes, and it's a focused 3 months. And they all wanted Espino and Centano. They all wanted to get Foye out of there. And what did Avicenna said? He said, "We outfoxed the bamboo army for 5 days." He said, and we got Foye to down to Palma 1, and with the Manzones family. There's a lot of detail that I didn't get into because I didn't have to. I'm sorry I went over.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I tried to keep it. Down. Believe it or not, I could have gone longer. So there's stories I didn't do, but I was over by at least 20 minutes probably.
No,
I just got rolling. I couldn't help it. There was no bell like when I was teaching in high school that the kids got released because the bell rang.
It's good. It's good. Actually, I think you can go on for 15 minutes more, and there's still a lot more to tell, right? So it's amazing because you said a while ago that picture of Mitcher was interesting. Yeah, because in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, Mitcher, despite the danger, turned on the lights of the carrier so that his pilots can come in at night, right?
Yes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And so I was really amazed that it was Mitcher who pinned the medal on your dad. Amazing.
So my father was a little bit of celebrity in New York City because St. Albans Naval Hospital was right on the outskirts of New York City. So he went to they had a dinner for Wainwright, General Wainwright in New York City. My father was invited to that. Was invited to Hap Arnold's dinner that was in New York City. So he got to go to, because he had the neck brace on still, and he was in his uniform. So he was a good guy to invite. And my mother would go, and in my mother's scrapbook, she would say, "Me and the Admiral," meaning my father as the Lieutenant J. kind of tongue in cheek. she wrote in the scrapbook. But there's a lot of different pieces. You read the book, it's enjoyable. It covers a lot of different areas.
Right. How long did he have to wear that neck brace for? Would you know?
He wore it through I think November. They put it on in July. He wore it through November, and that's what my fans are calling, I guess.
You have a fan call.
so he did that, but and then but the operation came out very well. So he was a fortunate guy. He didn't have any permanent numbness.
Yeah.
He had limited mobility in his neck. But he was a lucky man.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to be here. We're not just that he survived, and the people in the Philippines helped him, and I'm honored to tell the story.
Yeah. How did you feel? Okay, let's backtrack a bit. When you were younger, did your dad tell you stories about his wartime experience here, or was he the type who was quiet about it? I find the more that happened to somebody in combat, I found the less they talked about it. Mm-hmm. Especially maybe when they got into their 80s. But Dad died relatively young, so we knew that he was saved. We knew that the young man, Shano, Shano helped him, and he goes the whole time he's with my father. He's wearing his backpack and his goggles, and he and Estebeza,
are killed in April 1945. I mean, the war is almost over, and he's like 15, and he gets killed. And Sergeant Estebezo, who saved my dad, they're killed over by Santa Clara. There was a little battle over there about April 45, and they're both killed. They're so close. And it's so random who lived and who died. And the book remembers all these details. So we knew that. We knew there was a young person that helped save my father, but he never talked about the Philippines because it was so brutal. It was life or death. I mean, there's examples in their interview that actually Jose did, and they talk about bringing they caught a Macapali, and they brought him, and they pointed him out as a Manzones family, and they say, is that the person that because they pointed him out, they killed another family member and killed on the spot. It was life or death,
right?
Every day, I can't imagine the tension. My father was there for a little over 3 months,
right.
But the people in the Philippines lived it for years until the war was over. It was a brutal occupation.
It was,
as you know, and there are in San Luis. I didn't even go into San Luis. The Japanese came in looking for the pilots. It's a little village, and they came in looking for them. And the guerrillas and Foye and Boyle had left a couple days before, and they wouldn't tell where the pilots were. They wouldn't tell. They killed 14 people, kids, little babies. You know, the whole brutal thing, bayonets. And we went back to San Luis. And I said, go. I was with Angie and the driver. Angie was our guide. And let's go to the chapel. I just want to say a prayer. So we went to the chapel, and there were they had some guys watching the chapel. And one of the guys is a Manzones, and he's like he's probably the grandnephew of some of the guerrillas. They lived in San Luis, and one of the gals there she was a young kid, and she remembers that they had to leave San Luis because the word had come, like not secret, but the rumor had come the Japanese were coming. They had to get out of town because the Japanese came, and they massacred people because they wouldn't tell where the pilots were, where the guerrillas were, and they died. Another time they put a whole family, 2 families, into a hut with wood construction and grass on the roof. Put them in there. They had taken care of Foye. They took care of Foye. They put them into this little kid's grandparents, and they burned them alive. And that's in Alvin Senyos wrote about that, and that's in the book. And actually, Dahlia, my wife, read that in the archives down in Maryland, in College Park, Maryland, and she started crying. We're in the archives, and she's crying. I go, Dee, what's it? Because I was reading the Navy Enterprise things, and she was reading it. She goes, look at this. And I put the whole passage in the book. And it's very moving. People were dying to save, they died to save that pilot, Defiant. They were not going to let this occupation and the Japanese get over on them. And it's amazing what they did. And that happened. The doctor that treated my father was tortured and killed. The doctor that treated Boyle was tortured and killed. Boyle was in Lipa and went a little bit north of Lipa towards St. Tomas. They were trying to hide him before they linked him up. And hundreds were killed because they went into the village after Boyle was there, and they killed everybody. And there's some in the book. There's comments from the newspapers of what John Boyle thought. He was a great heroic pilot. Had a distinguished flying cross and flew off the USS Hancock. I mean, there's so many details and so many connections. It's amazing. My father flew on the same mission at Chichijima that George Bush had a parachute out. He was on my father's on the Enterprise and George Bush on San Jacinto, and Carrier Franklin was there, the three of them, and they were all. He was on that flight. In fact, George Bush, the submarine picked up Lieutenant Beckman after they picked up George Bush, and Beckman was their Group 20 fighter pilot. There's all kinds of connections.
Right.
Such as this.
You also mentioned the ace pilots there that signed their names, who were responsible for sinking the Musashi. Amazing.
Well,
in his group.
There's a number of air squadrons that sank the Musashi, but Air Group 20, they had, I think, the exact number. I think they had 10 bomb hits out of call it 17 dive bombers, and they have 8 torpedo planes, 4 on each side, and they put 8 torpedoes into it. So they had their claim, they had their share. But remember that, and we were talking about this earlier, that the Hellcats had 6 50 caliber machine guns, 3 on each wing, and they would have 5-inch rockets on occasion. So their job going into like attacking a battleship, they would dive at the battleship with the anti-aircraft guns firing at them, and they'd fire their machine guns and shoot their rockets to suppress fire from these big warships, so that the dive bombers could come in with less anti-aircraft coming after them. One of my father's buddies from Lowell, he shot. He put during that same battle, the Leyte Gulf battle. He put a 5-inch rockets into the destroyer, and maybe hit a torpedo or depth charge and sank the destroyer. He got a Navy Bellevue. He got a Navy Cross for that. But there's lots of stories like that. So if you're a naval historian, you will find new facts. If you read my book, you will find some different things. If you are a World War II aficionado of the Philippines, you will find some interesting things, because I had some sources that aren't necessarily available. Shorty Turnbull's edited memoirs from Air Group 20 that I had, and not many people have. They only gave it to the Air Group. So there's there. I know that you have a few books. We have a few books distributed there in the Philippines.
Right.
And to get started, but it's an interesting story. I've had a ball. It's been emotional to write the story. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad I was able to do this.
Right, and you met a lot of good friends along the way, including me.
I met so few. That's you, Cecilia. I mean, all the hierarchy of Philippine World War II history.
Ate Cecil, hi. I hope you're watching. It's very early in California, but I'm sure she's gonna watch. Or if she's not watching that, I'm sure she's gonna watch the.
And the people that and the people I met when I was there, I didn't know a lot of people when a lot of them. Angie, who was our guide, Philippine Trails was the tour group. They went to every place to try to find if there was something. Before we came, because they had to find the places so that they wouldn't have to be looking for them when D&I came. And it was a very moving experience to to do this, to sit on the hill and look at, and Howie says, oh yeah, right down there. My father wouldn't let me go down there. It's a very steep place. And he says, don't go there, it's unsafe. And he says, and Howie describes playing hide and go seek around Puto Hill. And he said, you could be almost right next to my brother and you couldn't see me. But when I talked, then you could find me. So how dense the vegetation was and how to find it. And it goes on and on, all the things that happened when we were in the Philippines. I talked about how gracious Lisa was to host us, and looking at Lake Tahoe that I have up now. I mean, this is from the hotel room. It was just unbelievable to think about. How the heck did he make it? You know,
Right.
PBYs coming in, P47s, the Lightnings, P38s covering the, and there's a couple stories from Manuel Roa's brother Waldo, who recounted stories his brother told him, and I put those in the second edition of the book, which you have that I didn't know. But just meeting Cynthia, so Cynthia Bonta at the conference that we met, she came up to me and Leonisa was hanging on my arm, and Cynthia says, my brother-in-law was a PQOG. And I had a big armful of books. I said, wait a second. I put it down, and then I went to the page where the guerrilla signatures were, and I said, is that Manuel? She says, oh my God. She says, oh my God. And I've met that person, and you know, it's been a great journey, and Dee has enjoyed it, and she has tolerated all the Navy museums and the archives and proofreading, and all the other editors that help my book.
Yeah. So guys, this is the book. Phil, while we're selling this, we are the only ones selling this in the Philippines. We are selling, this is a very good book, exclusively sold by Philippine World War II Memorial Foundation. We've sold several over the past months, and I have remitted to the Bill Foye Scholarship Fund. So it's actually very moving that Rich, gave all the proceeds to the scholarship fund, which sends kids in Los Banos, okay, on scholarship into school. Okay, so every purchase you make will help the Bill Foye Scholarship Foundation to send, a poor child to school in Laguna. So this is the book. We're selling it for $795. It's hardbound, and it's the second edition. It's a revised edition. There you go. There on the screen, it says Foye and the Filipinos. Rich, tell us a little bit about the cover. I know you mentioned this already, but how did Dee design this, right? Dee painted this?
Dee designed it and researched what the Navy pilot might have when they, if they bailed out, and also my father said that he had that Shano had his knapsack, his goggles, and he used to wear those all the time. Can you imagine? He's 15 years old. He's got the goggles on. He's got the USN knapsack, and he's going around, and he gets captured by the Japanese. He takes a gun and whacks the Japanese soldier over the head, and escapes and goes back. Just incredible things that he did, and I didn't even get into that.
Right, at 15.
Amazing.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Right. I read the book several years back, Rich, so it's a bit hazy with me, but I remember that during the first few times, Foye walked with the guerrillas, right? But then it became too painful because he had a severed neck and several nerves damaged. So how did he manage? Like, for the longest time, was he just lying down?
They put him on a horse.
How was it for Foye? Yeah,
they put him on a horse. They they quickly saw that he wasn't going to be able to do it by walking. So they got a horse, and especially from Los Banos, they went through Bay, they went and bypassed, I think, Santa Rosa, and they were into San Ildefonso, and they got him finally to Alaminos, the Palma 1 section, and that's where Fernando Manzones' house was. But they were looking for him. They went across, you might recall in the book, they went across a road at night. It was pouring rain. The Japanese trucks with the soldiers were pulled over to the side, and they were going to wait, but the Japanese soldiers stayed there. So they just went across the road, and Foye had to make himself look like one of the guerrillas, and they went across the road, and they could hear and see the Japanese off to their left, and they escaped. And one time Japanese were so close, the Japanese sent the dogs after them, and they were saved because there was a downpour. And as my father said, when it rains in the Philippines, it really rains.
Yeah.
And they were saved because the dogs couldn't pick up the scent.
Oh.
And so the rain came down so hard that the trail is hidden. I mean, there's all those stories that I didn't have time in this talk to go into, but the book goes into it.
Right. So guys, if you want a copy, it is available with us. Just message us, and we can deliver via Lalamove or Grab or JRS for provincial destinations. And the nice thing about this is this book supports the scholarship for the poor kids in Laguna. Right.
It's signed.
Rich, I want to read some of we have a lot of nice comments here, no?
All right.
So
the book's signed too. That's right. The book's signed. We signed the book.
Oh, yeah, the book is signed. Yes. So it's a plus. It's a signed copy. So for those of you Rich has put the price really down, despite everything. He had to fly this into us. It's just a $7.95 hardbound. So it's really a very good buy. And it has a lot of information, not just on Foye, but also naval history and naval stuff. Okay, I'll just read some of the nice comments here. It's Howard Season says, thanks, Delia, Foye, Richard Foye. Our viewer Jordan said, a story of greatness and glory. Thank you, sir. And then our viewer Louis Franco says, the local folks helped the pilots get back to safety at great peril. The retribution made against these folks are hardly mentioned in articles regarding the war. That's true. That's why I love Rich's book, because it really it has a lot about the guerrillas that helped Foye. Even the title, Foye and the Filipinos. I love this, Rich, that you thought about that. Because a lot doesn't mention the role that the guerrillas and the civilians played. Not just the guerrillas, but the civilians, no? Bob Hudson says, thank you, Mr. Foye, for sharing your father's story. So many nice comments. Thank you. Jeric Bonilla says, thank you very much, Sir Foye. Long live to you and your family. Francis says, thank you, Mr. Foye. And Jeric Bonilla says, salute to your father and other war veterans. Yes, agree. And then we have a viewer, Bobong de la Cruz. He says, I'm a proud son of a hunter. He was with Colonel Adevoso. Hi, Mr. de la Cruz. Salute to your father. Jerry Adevoso says, thanks for sharing your dad's story, Mr. Foye. A lot of them saying, wonderful story. Thank you very much for, Virgie Solis says, thank you very much for the very interesting war story, especially in Los Banos sites. Great job. Apparently, Virgie is from Los Banos. Richard Laroya said, I am from Talisay, Batangas, and was surprised to see that it is part of the rescue of Lieutenant Foye. Yes. A lot of them saying this is a good story. Wow, didn't know about this story. Thank you for sharing this. Amazing. Elizabeth watching from Houston, Texas. Hi, Miss Elizabeth. So really, it's a very moving story. And guys, I really suggest that you get a copy of the book. We are just scratching the surface, right, Rich? There's a lot more here.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Right.
There's so many themes.
Right.
Will this be we recorded this, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, so it'll be on your website or your Facebook site, right?
Right.
Okay. Because people have asked me, especially in California, they weren't getting up that early. I said, well, we're taping it.
True. A lot of my friends from California also messaged that, will you do the recording? I said yes, and they'll watch the recording. By tomorrow, I'm sure, the views for the recording will be, skyrocketing. So, Rich, sorry, I have a kind of like a modern twist to this. I remember you were telling me in 86, was it, or 85, when the Top Gun, the first movie came out, you watched it with your dad, right? So what was it? Was he commenting? Was he reliving, his pilot days?
I was, the World War II parents, you weren't going to movies a lot with your father when you're a little kid. I had big brothers, so my big brother would take me. So I said to my father, he was retired a few years at this point. I said, come on, Dad, let's go see Top Gun. And he said yes. He also said yes to Midway when that happened. But Top Gun, so they would do the different maneuvers in Top Gun when they were dogfighting. And my father was a high school principal. He was very kind of Navy straight arrow, and wouldn't be one to comment out loud in a movie theater. But he's calling out the maneuvers. That's a split S. That's he's doing a barrel roll, and mostly in New London, it's a lot of the military is Navy or Coast Guard, and you could tell some of them were military. So they were looking at him, at that point he was 65 years old, and they're looking at him like, wow, that guy might have been there. He might know something. But he had a ball watching it because he loved flying. He loved it. He said, what did he say? He used to, Navy flying, he said, was a hell of a lot of fun until they started to shoot back at you. And then it wasn't, it wasn't fun anymore. But it was a great, exciting thing. And he says once they were shooting back, it wasn't that much fun anymore. I mean, it was dangerous. Lots of pilots died. It was dangerous work, whether it was in training or whether you got in combat. I mean, they might not have had the pilot corps. Japanese pilot corps had. Its skills had decreased, but there were still some hot pilots in the Japanese group. But each Zero had 2 cannons and a couple of machine guns, and all the bullets that came at you. It didn't matter whether they came of a great pilot or a mediocre pilot. But he was. Can you imagine being in a dogfight over Clark Field, and there's initially 12 Hellcats, and there's 50 Japanese planes. And
oh wow, 50 Zero. That would be Mitsubishi Zeros.
There were Zeros. There were Franks, Oscars. Different. They had a lot. They had different kinds of fighters. They all came down. They'd come to Japan for most of them, and then they would fly to the Philippines. They had a lot of planes, but the pilot quality had gone down by for the Japanese by that time. But they were. I do describe some dogfighting over Formosa, and I use Formosa because that was the term, that was the name that they used back then, and over Clark Field, and so describe try to describe what happened. It just was. It just was incredible, and it's so random who made it, who didn't make it. He flew on the wing of Laxton, and in fact, I saw Laxton's name on at the Manila Cemetery, the American Cemetery. I looked around the Navy, and my father flew wing on him that day. but Laxton got one bullet, hit an oil line, and his engine seized up, and he got in an inverted dive. He couldn't get out, and the skipper, I put this in the book, the skipper's on the radio going, "Lax, bail out, bail out," and he couldn't get out because of the position he was in and the damage. So I went, when I was in the American cemetery, I went around and looked for his name, and his name's there. The Laxton name's there. I might have that photo in the book, and it's pretty moving stuff when you do that.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing.
Was he buried in MAC, or was his name on the wall?
His name was on the wall.
I see. I'm gonna look for that. Yeah, I'll be there this Tuesday. I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't know if there was, he crashed. He didn't bail out. He crashed into the ground. So I don't know what remains might have been there. But, you know, they, and those, as I said, you know, the brotherly love of a fighter squadron, they're all very close when they're dying. In fact, I mentioned Bellew from Lowell. He was away, not away, but he had to land on a different carrier, and he got back 3 days later to the Enterprise. And the first thing he did, he checked to see, you know, any news on Foye. But they pretty much thought they had written him off by February. They hadn't heard anything. But O'Malley did send out that they had the pilot, but it never got to the squadron. The information never got up. So when they pull into Pearl Harbor, they don't know where. They figure he's probably not alive because they haven't heard anything. And there, can you imagine him? He's on the pier. He's on the pier.
Because they saw him. Where the hell have you been?
And they had a few, and they probably had a few lemonades that night at down at the hotel in Honolulu, I think. You know, and he made it, and then he doesn't find out he's got a broken neck until he goes after he goes on leave for 30 days, goes home. His neck hurts. He's got to put his neck under the sink in the kitchen in his parents' house because it hurts so much. And he goes and he gets a physical before he's going down to Trenton Naval Air Station, New Jersey. He's going to, I think they're going to test and fly Corsairs down from the Connecticut factory in Stratford, and he was going to fly them down and test them and that kind of thing. And the flight surgeon said, "Well, let's take a picture of that neck." And they did, and they saw that it had been broken, and they all started to freak out a little bit. They said, "Don't move, don't move. We're going to get you to the hospital." And then they put them. They laminated the bones in the spine and put them back together, and it worked. And it worked out for him. But you know, everything had to go. Everything had to go right. My God.
Oh, you know, he is lucky, no? Very lucky. Right. So
you read the book, you go, "Wow, how did that happen?"
Right. So, you know, the broken neck was just discovered months later after he was rescued.
Right.
Weeks later. Oh,
so
wow.
he goes back. He gets home, I don't know, end of February, and 30 days. So it's like the end of March, early April. And then they discover it, and he goes into the hospital, and they fix his spine. They put wires into his head. That's what you see.
In the photo, yeah. That was him on the photo?
Yes, and you had to have nurses taking care of you. So one of the nurses, here's you'll like this story. And it's in the book also. One of my mother died. When my mother died, I sent I got a Christmas card sent, and I got the Christmas card, and I wrote back to this. He's a World War II veteran and a friend of my parents, and I said that you know, my mom passed away. So he wrote and a few things, and I said, and he wrote back, and he said, "Well, when your mother decided that Bill was the one," said, "your father had no chance." That's what you said. You find no chance because she was going to get Bill Foye. I thought that's kind of an old school. I mean, that doesn't, that wouldn't make the movie today. But back in that day, they said when your mother decided that your father Bill was the one, he had no chance. He had no chance. It was pretty funny.
Amazing story. We're running out of time. Thank you so much, Rich, for sharing your dad's story with us. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for highlighting what our guerrillas did and what the civilians did for your dad.
Oh yeah.
And I really am thankful and proud that the title of the book is Foye and the Filipinos. Amazing story, guys.
Nice salute to the
get
Filipinos.
Your hands on the book. Yes,
and the kids and the grandkids that are still here.
Right. And the one we have the guerrilla descendants watching now, no? So you should be proud of your grandfathers, great grandfathers,
Yes.
Just they were the greatest generation, I would say. Thank you so much, Rich. Thank you to Dee. Hi, Dee. I know you're there. Thank you so much for doing this for us. And there will be still a lot of questions. I'm sure we'll just email you and maybe you can answer the people right away. But really,
that's fine.
Comments here are amazing. It says one comment says, "Movie, please." It's worth the movie. And thank you Rich for bringing your dad's incredible story to life. Who would you choose to play your dad in the upcoming movie?
Well, I thought that.
He has to be 6'2". So Tom
I think
Cruise
6'2", handsome, but there was one, but he's too old now, and then I think the boxer has to be one of the guerrillas.
Okay. And Tom Cruise is out. He's just 5'10".
The politician, we got to put him in there.
Oh, Pacquiao. Yes. Oh, he kind of looks like Avancenia, no? And I like that photo of Avancenia with the PQOG patch right here. I'm sure my World War II friends here are, looking at that picture intently while you were showing it. So thank you so much, Rich. I hope we have more time, but sorry for extending. I told you it would just be an hour and a half, but there's just so many comments and questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, folks, for watching. Again, you can message us if you want a copy of the book. Jessica, can we show the post? So we're selling it at $795. It's hardbound and signed by, I'm looking at the copy, signed by Rich Foye. So there you go. That's already a plus. And it's a very interesting book. Thank you so much. So for some announcements, for next month, we will be featuring episode 11 already, and it will be about the Catholic Church at the crossroads during World War II. It's a very interesting topic. We should have done this August, but there were a lot of, Rich, I had many World War II friends and guests over, so we had to postpone it. So we're going to do this next month. Our speaker will be Brother Aaron Velasco, and he will be talking about the Catholic Church at the crossroads during World War II. So watch out for it, October 29th. Again, we'll post on our Facebook page. Please like our page, Philippine World War II Memorial Foundation, and FAME, Filipino American Memorial Endowment. Please like our pages so that you'll be updated of our lecture series. Thank you so much, Rich. And this has been a wonderful episode amid the backdrop of romance, drama, action, espionage. Amazing. So we'll see you guys next month, October 29th, for episode 11. Thank you so much. Take care. Good night and stay safe.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.